In this presentation, we will work a problem focusing in on recording the budgetary account, recording the related encumbrances and expenditures, and then the subsidiary ledgers related to them. The information is going to be on the left side. We're going to put that information into the blue areas on the right side. We're going to have our journal entries, which will be recorded in the general journal, post them then to the general ledger or trial balance, no general ledger, but our worksheet, which will have the beginning balance, then the adjustments and the ending balance, so we can see the effect on the accounts, see the accounts in order, and see the accounts increasing and decreasing, assets in green, liabilities in the orange, and then what would be the equity section or the assets minus liability section in the light blue, and then what would be the income statement section if we were talking about a for-profit organization in the dark blue, those being the temporary accounts, those accounts that we would expect to be closed out from those temporary accounts to the equity type section if it was a for-profit, or the assets minus the liabilities. Here, it's going to be a little bit more muddied up. This is where we'll spend a lot of our time. Why? Because one, we have the budgetary accounts that are going to be down here, such as estimated revenues, appropriations, and what's a budgetary or kind of like clearing account, the encumbrances. So we're going to have to deal with those items as we record this information. And then we've got the subsidiary ledgers on this side, which are going to break out the detail of some of our specific accounts, including the estimated revenue accounts, and the appropriations, encumbrances, and expenditures. So we're back over here in A1, and we're taking a look at the posting of the budgetary activity. You'll see in the information we have the estimated revenues. That information is broken out between property taxes, license and permits, fines and forfeitures. We're going to put the budget on the books, but we're not going to put the detail on the books. We're just going to put the one line item here on the books. Then the detail would be given in the subsidiary ledger. So we're actually going to record the budget. This is kind of a new thing. This is a different thing than from a for-profit type of organization. So if we go back over to our chart of accounts, there's going to be a budgetary account related to the major type of income statement accounts, those below what would be the equity section or in the dark blue section. So typically we have revenue. Now we have revenue has a credit balance. We now have estimated revenue. And it's going to be the opposite in terms of its normal balance, in this case, of course, being a debit balance. I'm going to copy the revenue account, or let's do it with formulas. So I'm going to put my cursor in E5, and we're just going to say equals revenue. That's going to be our first account. I'm going to pick that up from our budgetary information, not picking up the detail, but just the total amount, and there's the total. There's going to be our estimated revenue. Then we have the estimated expenses. So here's going to be our kind of expense-related account called expenditures. The budgetary account related to it's kind of confusing. You might say, well, there's two. There's appropriations and encumbrances. I would break encumbrances out in your mind to like a clearing account as opposed to like the normal kind of budgetary account, the one that we're going to start off with, that being in the appropriations. So the appropriations is kind of like the budgetary account related to expenditures instead of expenses. Expenditures, expenses, like expenses, typically have a debit balance, and therefore the related budgetary account, appropriations, will have a credit balance. So we're going to put that down below. We're going to make it a credit. We're going to say that's going to be equal to the credit, the one down below. And I'm going to say that's negative in this cell to make it a credit. I'm going to represent the credits with negative numbers. And once again, those items are down here. They're broken out by category of general government, public safety, public works, culture, recreation, miscellaneous. We're not going to break them out by category with the budgetary accounts. We're going to put them in one line item. Then the breakout of the detail will be in the subsidiary ledger. So there is that. Now, of course, we have a difference between the debit and the credit. We're going to record that difference in somewhere. We're going to have an equal number of debits and credits. I'm going to do that with the negative sum or plug formula, which is going to be negative SUM of these items, negative sum of these items. And so that's going to give us our difference in order to make the credits equal to the debits of the $2,990,000. And where's that going to go? Well, we don't know where to put it, so we're going to make up some other account. When we make up an account, normally we put it into the equity section. So we've put stuff into an estimated accounts, into like the revenue. There's going to be a difference, which would be like estimated net income. You can think about it. Where are we going to put that? Well, into some kind of net income type of account is part of equity. So we're going to put some account up here. We're just going to call it the budgetary fund balance. Budgetary fund balance. And so I'm going to say equals the budgetary fund balance. And there we have it. So now we'll record this out. We're going to record the estimated revenues. Here is the estimated revenues. That's going to be in cell K9. K9 is going to be equal to, and then we're going to pick up that debit, increasing from 0 up in the debit direction. Then we have the appropriations. The appropriations are going to be down here in K11. So within K11, we're going to say equals, and we're going to scroll up to the appropriations credit. And there we have that item. And then the difference is going to go to the budgetary fund balance. Here is the budgetary fund balance. We are in K7. Within K7, we're going to say this equals and point to that 225,000. That'll be the difference. So now we've posted our information. We're going to have to break out down here on the income statement items what are going to be the budgetary activities as opposed to the normal kind of revenue minus expenses type of activities. Of course, the debits minus the credits in total now being in balance, and therefore we can move forward. Next item, we've got revenues in the form of license and permits and fine and forfeiture. So this is going to be revenue to the government. We're going to say that the cash was received for these items. So if cash was received, we could say, well, that's going to be easy. We're just going to debit cash. That's going to be our starting point. That's nice. So we'll start up top and say cash is going up with a debit. Cash is cash. Nothing very unusual when cash is affected. Again, we can breathe a sigh of relief most of the time and say, hey, well, at least I know what one account is doing. And then the other side is going to be revenue, because this is going to be revenue to the government. So we're going to say revenue. That's going to be the credit. This looks very similar to what we would think in a for-profit type of organization if we were to make a sale, for example, for cash at that point in time. The amount then on the debit is going to be for the cash received, $60,400. The credit then is going to go to revenue. So it's kind of a normal type of transaction we would expect from a for-profit type of organization. We're going to post the cash first. We're going to post that up here in cell K5. So within K5, we're going to say this equals, scroll down to that debit, $60,400, it going up to $60,400. Then the revenues account. So we are in revenues, that's in K10. We're going to say that that equals, point to the revenue, $60,400, and enter. And that, of course, goes up in the credit direction. When we break out these accounts down here, which would be normally income statement accounts, once again, now we have to kind of muddy things up because we have to basically group the budgetary accounts and the normal type of revenue and what would be normal, but kind of normal expenditures rather than expenses type of activity. Next item we have in number 3 says that we have orders and estimates. So orders and estimates, they're broken out between the governmental, public work and safety, and so on. Once again, we're not going to break out the detail here, but put it in one line item, breaking out the detail in the subsidiary ledgers. Remember that this is one of the unusual steps that we're going to have right here, because it's going to say that we have estimates or say purchase orders that have happened. And in normal accounting, we don't record the purchase order or the estimate because no financial transaction has happened. In other words, under an accrual basis, we're not going to recognize the expense or the receipt of something like inventory or supplies yet because we haven't got them yet. And we're not going to record any kind of payment or owing the payment because we haven't received the supplies and we haven't made any payment. So under financial transactions, there's nothing that triggers us recording the inventory or the expense on a normal accrual basis. But for governmental accounting, we want to record the fact that we have those appropriations, the estimated amounts, and now we've further allocated those appropriations by committing to a purchase order or an estimate. So we want to be more transparent in essence, putting a holding account, recording what would be kind of similar to an expense account before we're allowed to record the expense account under normal kind of accrual or even modified accrual basis. So what we're going to do is we're going to record kind of a holding account for expenses. And we're saying, hey, of these appropriations, we've already assigned some of these items, even though we have not yet received them. And that's an attempt to be more transparent. So we're going to say, all right, encumbrances then are going to be in the increase. And this is that funny account. Technically it's a budgetary account, but I would think of it as a kind of a clearing account, the appropriations being the budgetary account. Now we're applying out the appropriations to encumbrances, which is kind of like a holding point, because we can't yet record the expenditure because the financial transaction hasn't happened under normal kind of recording purposes, whether that be accrual or modified accrual. And then the credit, then where are we going to put the credit? Well, we don't know where to put it because we just made up another account that's not under normal type of accounting transactions. So where do we stuff the other side normally? into the equity, what would be the equity type section. So we're in the equity, or what would be the equity type section in the encumbrances outstanding. And then we're going to break out these amounts. So we're picking up the full line item, and we're going to pick up the detail when we get to the subsidiary ledgers. So here's the debit, there's the credit, there we have it. Now we're going to post this out. So here's going to be the encumbrances. That's going to be down below. That's in the encumbrances line item. We are in cell K13. This equals, pointing to that debit, increasing the 0 up in the debit direction. Then we have the encumbrances outstanding. We are over here in cell K8 equals, and we'll go to that credit, increasing that amount. That puts us back in balance here. So now we're back in balance. We have this item. That, again, it's kind of a holding account. It's a little bit unusual. It may not even close out as we normally would think about it at the end of the time period, because it's really a holding account until we get to those expenses. Next item, let's see what happens. Then we have the materials have been received at the actual cost, and the related estimated amounts are going to be these items. So, in other words, we sent the purchase order for this $35,900, and now we've received the items. Now, when we receive the items, we may not receive the full amount related to this $35,900 at one time. And so what we have to do then is then break out the estimate related to the amounts that we have and compare that to the actual, because the purchase order and the estimates were just estimates. The actual amount will be different. So we have to figure out, okay, how much of the amount did we get? What's the estimated amount we had for the supplies that we received? In other words, if we got the supplies, we can imagine what was our purchase order or estimate on them compared to the actual bill related to those items. And then what we're going to do is the holding account that we have up top, which is the encumbrances account, we're going to say we've received some of those now. So now we're going to move this account up to expenditures, because now we can actually record the normal type of transactions as we normally would. But before we can, we need to reverse what we did before, which is that kind of weird holding account thing. And the reversal is going to be easy. It's just going to be the opposite of what we did here. And you can see that in the fact that the encumbrances outstanding will always be equal and opposite to the encumbrances. So then we can reverse it exactly. We're going to say, okay, I'm going to reverse this exactly. We're not going to pick up the same dollar amount as here, however, because we may not have reversed all of it at the same time. We're going to pick up whatever the estimated amount of the amounts that we've received. And in that case, that's going to be this, in our case, it's going to be the $34,100, different than the actual amount by, in our case, $100. So we're going to reverse $34,100. Let's do that first, and then we'll record the expense. Two transactions, you would think of, and I would think of them as two transactions. Encumbrances outstanding, here it is on our books. We're in K8, something's in it, going to double click on it, go to the end of it, say plus, then point to that $34,100 and enter. So we're left with the $1,800 that we have not yet received for related to the encumbrances and the purchase orders and the estimates. And then we have the encumbrances. So we're going to go to K13. This is kind of unusual. It doesn't act like an expense. It goes up and then down like a clearing account. Double click on it because something's in it. Say plus at the end of it, and then point to that $34,100, bringing the balance down to $1,800. Okay, and then the next item that we're going to have is the fact that we're going to record the actual expenses. So now we'll record the actual expenses. So the actual expenses is going to be what we would normally expect, which was going to be a debit to expenditures, and then if we paid for it, which I'm just going to assume we paid cash here, we're going to credit cash. So now the actual financial transaction has happened, and we're going to record that. And we're going to pick up, when you do this, the actual amount. So I'm just scrolling down to the actual amount, which is going to be different than the estimated amount, or can be, or may be. And there we have that. So this is going to be our normal type of transaction, expenses rather than expenditures, but other than that, pretty normal. So here's going to be the expenses. We want to be in cell K12. That's going to be equal to, and then point to that $34,200, bringing it up to $34,200. And then we have the cash on the other side. So we'll be up top in K5. Something's in it. Double click on it. Go to the end of it and say plus. Scroll back down, and we're going to pick up that credit to cash and enter. So there we have that. We're back in balance with the green zeros. The next thing we'll do is take a look at the subsidiary ledgers. So now we're going to be over here in the subsidiary ledgers. We are in column N. We're going to first take a look at the subsidiary ledger related to revenue and estimated revenues. So there's two accounts that we're kind of dealing with, the budgetary account for revenues and the normal revenues account. And those are going to be these two line items. You'll recall that there was a breaking out of the detail when we looked at the information that we put in here. And so now we're going to break out that detail as we would kind of in like a subsidiary ledger for accounts receivable or something. Now being broken out for accounts receivable would be broken out by customer as opposed to the general ledger just breaking out by date. So we're going to pick up this information. Now, one way to make this a little bit easier is you might want to hide some cells up top. So we'll practice that. I'm going to hide cell J and K. Don't really need them anymore so that we can break out this information. I'm going to put my cursor on J, left click, and scroll over to K, let go. Then I'm going to right click on the selected area and hide it. And there we have it. So now we can't get as confused possibly with the information we have. So now we're just going to go through this and pick up this information. Now the first thing that happens is we had the budget. So we have the budget. And we're going to pick this up by category. So we had taxes, license and permits, fines, and intergovernmental. So the taxes I'm going to pick up top, and that's going to be on the estimated side. And we're going to say this equals and scroll over to our detail where we have this information because this is the total that we're looking for. We're going to be picking up the taxes first. So enter, there we have that. And then the license and permits, again, the budgeted information, I'm going to say is equal to the license and permits, this 410, and so on and so forth. We're going to go down to the fines and forfeitures. The estimate is going to be equal to, and I'm just picking up the fines and the forfeitures of the 330,000. And then the next line item is going to be the intergovernmental, the grants. And that once again is going to be equal to, we'll pick up that last line item, which is going to be the grants up top, and that's the 270. And then if we total this up, I'm going to total this up then here. We're going to say this equals the sum of adding these up. Don't worry about the words. Won't throw off the total. And this line item then should match up to our estimated revenues. So now we have the detail down here of the estimated revenues. Now we're going to do the same thing for the revenues and break out the detail of the revenue accounts. So the revenue accounts, you'll recall, were broken out when we got the revenue between license and permits, fines and forfeitures. That's all we have so far. So we're going to go, all right, let's go back up to the revenue. We didn't get any for the taxes yet. That's going to be coming later. That we got cash collected here in terms of revenue. I'm going to make this a credit. I'm going to make it a negative and pick up the revenue. And that was for the license and permits, the 42.1. So there we have that. And then we also have the fines, I believe it was. So fines, and we got the revenue. We're in the revenue column. I'm going to say negative. Scroll back over and pick up the fines and forfeitures of the 18,300. So there we have that. If we were to sum up all of the revenue then, on the credit side, we would then have a credit of the 60,400, which of course ties out to the line item on revenue. That's our subsidiary ledger. Now we can break out the running balance. I'm going to make a running balance of these items. I'm just going to say this equals the sum of these. And then I'm going to equal the one above it plus any activity below it. We don't really need to do it here, but I'll do it anyways. Well, the one above it plus the sum of the activity below it. That's going to be our standard formula. So let's do that again. Equals the sum of these items. And then this equals the one above it plus the sum. So we'll do it again here. It equals the one above it plus the sum. And we're adding it because this is a negative number. So it's plus a negative number of these items and then bracketing these items. So in essence, the 410 minus the 42.1. Let's do that down here. Equals the sum of these items. This equals the one above it plus the sum of these items, which in essence will subtract it. So the 330 minus the 18.3. And then this is just going to be the sum of these. And then we can sum this up this way. So we just sum these up, this minus this. or we can double check it by saying this equals the ending balance is only the ending balance plus the ending balance plus the ending balance plus the ending balance, and that should give us basically a double check. So these two items then tie out, and that's our summary for the subsidiary ledger. Let's do the same kind of thing for the more expense related accounts, which includes the appropriations, the expenditures, and encumbrances. To do that, we're going to hide some cells. So I'm going to put my cursor on N. So you see the drop down such as this, left click, drag over to R, let go, right click on the selected area, hide. And now we'll do the same thing. Now this is a bit more confusing because of course now we have a subsidiary ledger that is handling multiple different accounts, encumbrances, expenditures, and appropriation. So we're going to break this information out to the general, the public safety, the public works, and so on and so forth. We're going to start off with the activity. We'll do this kind of in order as it happened. First thing that happens, we recorded the budget, which is the appropriations. I hope I spelled that right. Now we have the columns up top. We have encumbrances, expenditures, and then appropriations are going to be over here. So we're going to start way over here with the appropriations. I'm going to put it on the books with a negative because that's how we do it. It's contra to the other accounts, the expenditures. So I'm going to say negative, and then we'll go back over to our estimates. So our estimates were up top. We had the budget, approved, and appropriations. Now we're in the general government activities. We're going to pick up the 540. So there's the 540. It's going to be in a credit, and then we're going to scroll down. We're going to do the same thing all the way down. We're in the public safety. I'm putting the same appropriations here, and we're going to be in the public safety under the appropriations column. And then we're going to say negative instead of equals. We're going to scroll to the left, and we're going to look for the 1,600,000 for the budgeted amount for public safety, and enter. And then we're going to scroll down. We're going to do the same thing for the public works. So within the public works, we're going to be in cell Y23. We're going to say negative instead of equals. We're going to scroll to the left, and we're going to look for that budgetary amount for the appropriations public works being the 402,000, and enter. And then we're going to scroll down. We're going to do the same for the culture and recreation. We are in cell Y30. So this is going to be negative instead of equals. Scrolling to the left and then scrolling up, and we're going to pick up that budgetary amount. We're in the culture and recreation, I believe, which is going to be the 161, and enter. Next item, miscellaneous, last one. We are in cell Y37. I'm going to say negative instead of equals. Scrolling to the left. We're looking for miscellaneous up top in the appropriations amount. That's going to be in cell B14. So B14, and enter. Then I'm going to sum this up. We're going to have the total down below. We'll check this out and see if it ties out to what we have on the trial balance, which it should. I'm going to say the sum of everything up top, the sum of these items up top. And there we have it, and enter. That adds up to 2,765,000. 2,765. Let's hope that adds up here. 2,765 looks good. So we've matched that out. Now we're going to be looking at the appropriations and expenditure. So we'll go back up, and under the appropriations, we're going to say something like the orders and estimates. That's what happened next. And that's going to be when the encumbrances went up, like the estimated accounts. We're going to look at the encumbrances. Note, they went up and then back down. So we're going to record the increase, and then we're going to record the decrease. So we have the encumbrances increasing, and we're going to say this equals, and we'll go back. Oh, not there. Don't do it there. We're going to do that here. In the debit side, in the increase in T10 equals, scroll to the left, and then we're going to scroll back down, and this is when we had the orders. So we had the general government type orders, 8,004, and then again, we'll do this all the way down. It's going to be great. We're in the public safety, same items. We're breaking out the detail. We're in T17 equals, in the encumbrances. Going to scroll back over and scroll down, and we have the public safety, and enter, and then we're going to scroll down to the public works and do the same process within the public works. So there's the public works. We are in cell T24, scrolling to the left, looking for public works. So we want to pick up the public works, which is going to be down in cell B24, and enter. Next item, we're going to have culture and recreation equals the orders and estimates. Culture and recreation is going to be equal to, scrolling to the left, the 5002 in B26 and enter. And then finally we have the miscellaneous. So the miscellaneous is going to be this item. We're going to say this equals to, and we're going to scroll to the left to pick up the miscellaneous item, which is going to be the 1009 in B27 and enter. And then we can sum these up, and the total in T41 equals the sum of the items above it. That's not going to match the trial balance yet, but we can tie that out 35.9 to this activity, so that looks good. And then we decrease this when we had the receipt of the items. So we decreased then with the estimated amount, and then the actual cost is what the expenditures go on the books for. So this is when we decrease the encumbrances. So we're going to go up top back to the general government. We're going to say the items received, and we're going to say that the encumbrances are going to go down by the estimated amount. On the same line, we're going to say that the expenditures are going to go up, but they're going to go up by the actual amount. So in cell, let's do all the encumbrances first. We're in cell U11. I'm going to say this is negative now for a credit. Go to the left, and we're going to scroll back down, and we're picking up the estimated amounts now. So we want to be in column C, C34, and enter. So there's going to be that. We're going to do this all the way down. So now we're on the public safety. We're in cell U18, negative. Scrolling to the left, scrolling down. We're looking for the public safety. We want to be in the estimated amount in the 11.7 and enter. Then we're going to go down to the next item, and it's going to be items received. We want to be in cell U25, negative. Scrolling to the left, and we want to scroll down. We're in the public works now. So public works is the 6009 and enter. So there we have that item. Then we're in the culture and recreation. We're going to have the items received. We want to be in cell U32, culture and recreation. So culture and recreation, we want to be on the estimated cost, the 5002 and enter. So there we have that. And then the miscellaneous items received. We're down here on the credit side under encumbrances. We're looking for miscellaneous, negative of the miscellaneous, the 9001 on the estimated side. There we have it. Now we're gonna record the running balance now, and then we'll take a look at the totals. Let's take a look at this total first. So we'll say this equals the sum. Let's total this column up. So we'll total that up, and that adds up to the 34.1. Still doesn't add up to the trial balance yet, but the difference between those two should. And we can then check this out over here and say this is the 34.1. So we can see the difference here now. This would equal the sum of the change in those two. That's going to be the 1,800. That's what's now on the trial balance. So that now has been broken out between the detail and the subsidiary ledger. We can run the running balance as well. So the running balance, if we go through each of these accounts, is going to be equal to the sum of these two items, and then the one above it plus the change equals the one above it plus the sum of these items, or the difference. Close it up. There we have it. Or this minus this. Then we're going to have the balance here is the sum of these items, and this equals the one above it plus the sum of these items. Close up the brackets. We're just subtracting it back out. So there's still 1,600 left in the public safety. And then the encumbrances equals the sum of these items, and then this equals the one above it plus the sum of the ones below. Close up the brackets. And then again, we're still left with 200 there that haven't been received. And then we have the sum of these items, and then equals the one above it plus the sum of the ones below. And then those are done. And finally, the miscellaneous equals the sum of these items, and this is the one above it plus the sum of these. Close up the brackets. There we have that. Now if we want to double check this number, we can just take the balances, the balance plus the balance plus the balance plus the balance plus the balance, and that gives us our 1,800 check. All right, now we're going to go to the expenditures, and we'll do the same kind of process here for the expenditures. and we're going to be on the same line item, except that we're going to now debit it, and we're going to debit it for the actual amount, not the estimated amount. So when we receive the items, we've recorded the expenditure. This is equal for the government. The expenditures actual, which is going to be the 8,300, and enter. So there we have that item. Now we're down here in W18, public safety equals, scrolling to the left, scrolling down, and we're going to pick up the public safety actual amount and enter. So there we have that. Then we're in the public works. We're in W25 equals, scrolling to the left, public works actual amount is going to be that 7,100 and enter. And then we're going to go down to the culture and recreations equals, scrolling to the left, scrolling down, culture and recreations. We want the actual amount, 5,100, enter. Then finally, miscellaneous in W39 equals, scrolling to the left, and the miscellaneous actual amount, 1,900. Then we can sum these up, equals the sum of these items. We can sum these up. And there's our 34.2. That should add up to what's on the trial balance. So if we go to the trial balance, there's our 34.2. And then we can add these up. The balance is just going to be the same because there's been no other activity. So I'm just going to go down and say this equals the same amount for the balances. This equals the same amount for the balance. Same amount, no activity, no other activity. And then we could say that the balance equals the same amount, and then we can copy this over, and that's just copying down the balance accounts. Okay, so then we can look at the total then. So now we've got the three categories, and we've checked those three items, and now we can see the total kind of balance between these two, applying out the appropriations. So we started off with the appropriations, in other words, and then the next thing is the running balance. We had the appropriation, and then we're going to say that the activity plus the sum of the activity for the encumbrance, which is going to be these two, plus the sum of, or we don't even need a sum, plus the activity for the expenditures. So we're basically having a running balance of the encumbrance of the balance, which would be the encumbrance minus the encumbrances. I'm sorry, the appropriations minus the encumbrances minus any activity in the expenditures. So then we'll do the same thing here, the balance above plus the sum of the activity for the encumbrances, and then plus the expenditures. So we've got this minus this item, and then plus this item. So the negative number, it's going to be increased by the negative number, and then it's going to be decreased by the expenditure because it went back up by the encumbrance, which got reversed and then expensed. So we'll do that process all the way down. This equals this item. This is the one above it plus the sum of these two, close up the brackets, plus the detail in the expenditure. This equals the item above it plus the sum of these items, close up, plus the activity in the expenditure. And then we go down to the public works. This equals this item. This equals the item above it plus the sum of the activity here, close up the brackets, plus the expenditure activity. This equals the item above it plus the sum of the activity here, plus the expenditure activity, and enter. And note, once you have the first one, if you do the formula correctly, you could copy it down, autofill it down. I'm just retyping the formula just to get used to what it's entailing. Enter, and then we have the culture and recreation. This equals the item next to it. This equals the item above it, plus the sum of the activity in the encumbrances, plus the expenditure. This equals the item above it, plus the sum of the activity in encumbrances, close up the brackets, plus the activity in the expenditure, and one more. This equals the item to the left. This equals the one above it, plus the sum of the encumbrances, close up the brackets, plus the expenditure. This equals the item above it, plus the sum of the encumbrances activity plus the expenditure and enter. And then we have the total, which is going to be equal to the appropriations plus the sum of the encumbrance activity plus the expenditure activity. And we could double check it by looking at the balances here. So the balance is going to be equal to, and if we just add up the ending balances plus the ending balance here plus the ending balance here plus the ending balance here plus the ending balance here, we should be able to double check that amount. We can then use that information to compare the budget information to the actual information. So now we've got the budgetary to the actual and basically make a report based on, in essence, the subsidiary ledger. So to do that, I'm going to unhide the subsidiary ledger for the revenue, which is between M and S. So I'm going to put my cursor on L so I don't miss it. So I'm on L. I'm going to highlight down to S, let go, right click on that selected area and unhide so we can see our estimated versus actual. And then I'm just going to populate our data. I'm just going to summarize this table. So I'm going to say and we're going to list out our items, which is going to be equal to the taxes up top, and then license and permits is going to be the second item. And then I'm just picking up the line items for our subsidiary ledger, fines and forfeitures. And then we had the intergovernmental. So those are going to be our line items. And then the budgeted amount, I'm just going to pick up the budgeted amount, is going to be equal to, from the subsidiary ledger, the amount for taxes, the budgeted amount for the license and permits, the budgeted amount for the forfeitures, which we'll just pick up from the subsidiary ledger, and then finally the budget amount for the intergovernmental activity. And there we have that. And then we'll pick the actual amount up, and I'm going to say there's only two items we had an actual amount. I'm going to say negative to flip the sign of the license and permits. And then we had something in the fines and forfeitures, which again, I'm going to say negative instead of equal to pick up the fines and forfeitures. And there wasn't anything else in the other items. So we could put together our report fairly quickly, equals the sum, and it's just summarizing this data from the subsidiary ledgers. And if we subtract the two out, we have the differences, and then we can just copy that down. So I'm taking the difference here and copying that down, and then we'll sum up. So there we have that, and we can add some. So then we'll do the same thing for the more expenditure type items, the appropriations, encumbrances, and expenditures. We have a similar list of categories, but I'll pick them up. We're going to say that this is going to be equal to the general government. Then we had the public safety. Then we had the public works. Then we had the culture and recreations, and finally the miscellaneous. So finally the miscellaneous items, and then we're going to have the total. The appropriations, I'm going to say negative in order to flip the sign because they're on as a credit. Was for the governmental was up top. Actually, it's the 540. And then for the public safety, it's going to be this item, negative of the culture. It's going to be this item, negative of the culture and recreation. That was the public works. Is going to be this one. And then miscellaneous is going to be the 62. And then we have the encumbrances. Now we're just going to pick up the balances. The only two that still have encumbrances outstanding are going to be the public safety. So I'm going to say equals to, and take a look at the public safety, which still has that 1006 in it. And then I'm going to pick up the public works, which still has encumbrances of the 200. The rest do not, so I'm just going to say 0. And then the expenditures We'll pick up the expenditures for them. So the expenditures up top, that's going to be in the balancing concept to column to the right, 8,003. Expenditures for public safety is going to be our 11,8. That's the one. And then expenditures for public works is going to be the 7,1. Expenditures for culture and recreation, 5,1. And then expenditures for miscellaneous is going to be the 1,9. So there are those items. And then the available appropriations is going to be the appropriations minus the encumbrances and expenditures, or equals this minus the sum of these two. So notice what we're saying here is this is the appropriation. Either we've encumbered it, meaning we've already assigned it somewhere but haven't yet triggered the expense yet, haven't received it, or we've reversed the encumbrance and have received the expense. Either way, the appropriation has been assigned in one format or another. So then we can copy that down and then total this up. So these are our appropriations, summing those up, and then we can copy this across, auto-filling all the way across. And of course, the appropriations should line up then to our totals for the appropriations, the 2,765, the balance for the encumbrance, 1,8, and for the expenditures, 34,2. So if we scroll back over here, we have the appropriations, 2,765, the 1,8, and the 34,2. So these two schedules then comparing the budget to the actual, we could put together fairly quickly by category, but we need the subsidiary ledgers to do that. The trial balance only has them broken out, or doesn't have them broken out. They're in one line item.